Hello, everyone. Welcome back into another episode of Sports Talk Chicago. Joey Christopoulos filling in for John Zach Glule. We're talking 10 burning questions that I have for Chicago Bears training camp right now. And towards the very end, we're going to talk MLB trade deadline for the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox. Before we begin, I want to give a quick shout out to our wonderful radio affiliates broadcasting Sports Talk Chicago throughout the great state of Illinois. 98.3 The Life, WKAN, W55 The Ticket, ACTV, JED-TV, WJOB, Cities 92.9 Talk FM, and 101.1 Peoria Sports Radio. Want to give a shout out to my producer, John Meadows at the controls, always doing an amazing job week in and week out. Check us out on socials at Sports Talk Chi, Instagram, Twitter, whatever's clever. Also, make sure you check out if you want to do audio-only podcasts. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Google, Apple, Spotify, doesn't matter. We'll be there, Sports Talk Chicago. And if you're watching us here on YouTube, thank you so very much. Throw a like, throw a comment, throw a subscribe. Do what you got to do. Chicago Bears training camp. We're a couple days in. We're finally getting reports. We're getting videos. They're not quite in pads yet. We're getting there. But before you blink, and probably by the time you listen to my next show next week, the Chicago Bears are going to be getting prepared to play a Hall of Fame preseason game on the field. It's exciting stuff, so I wanted to go through my top 10 burning questions that I have right now in Chicago Bears training camp. So we are going to kick it off right off the bat here. I'm going to go number one here. I'm going to keep this one simple. My number one burning question for Chicago Bears training camp is, Caleb, how you doing? How you sleeping? How you eating? What are you doing? Are you happy? Are you sad? What rookie song are they going to make you sing? I mean, if I had my pick, I would think Caleb Williams would be a great ringer for a weekend song, even though I love with all the narratives in the offseason, he goes with something along the lines of Prince, maybe a little Raspberry Beret, whatever you want to do, Caleb. I'm here for it. Look, I'm in full-on Caleb Williams information mode. Whatever you want to throw at me, I will probably inhale and digest as quickly as possible. And we're 3 practices through. By the time you listen to this, they're probably 4 or 5 training camp practices through. But so far, the results have been encouraging. For those of you that have been with me in past episodes, thank you so much for coming back. But I've been telling this story for a while where, as a Chicago Bears fan, my entire life, every single training camp comes around, and I try and listen to whatever hits that come out and the reporters that come on. Often one of my favorite reporters, Jeff Dickerson, he'll come on. And unfortunately, they'll come on, and there's a lot of coded messaging for the reporters because they don't want to bury a young quarterback who's having a bad training camp. I've heard it countless times. Even with veterans like Jay Cutler, you would hear, he threw a lot of interceptions. He's trying to fit the ball into tight windows to test the defense and see what he can get away with now so he doesn't do it in the regular season, even though we all know at the end of the day, Jay Cutler, when the light turned on, he still tried to fit in those tight windows. With Mitch Trubisky, you hear it a lot. The defense is in front of the offense. That is code speak for Mitch is not playing well. And even with Justin Fields, you would hear a little bit of an up, a little bit of a down, a little bit of the good, a little bit of the bad, but mostly it was Justin at times was holding onto the ball too long, even in 7-on-7s. Now, look, even if a rookie quarterback or any quarterback has a bad practice, I'm not saying that they can't recover and move on and improve and stabilize. But you do want to see some encouraging signs, some habits that are being formed that you can hopefully then say, look, those are going to translate into the regular season. And those are the types of things that I've looked for. And so far, there have been several reporters, national, local, guys that I respect, guys that have been guests here on the show, that are already on the record saying encouraging things about Caleb Williams. So let's start here. Let's start first with 670 The Score's Chris Emma. He was on. He did a hit just a couple days ago. This is what he said, quote, "It's different with Caleb. He's got that processing element. I've talked to people around the league that believe that day one, he will be one of the best processing QBs in the NFL." End quote. Chicago Bears fans, we have never heard that uttered before about a single Bears quarterback I think that we've ever had. I mean, strike lightning on me if you think Jim Miller and Kyle Orton were of that ilk. I'm sure they could process the field, but one of the best processors QBs in the NFL, some people believe that. I'm just going to call that encouraging. I'm not going to buy into it because I think rookies go through ups and downs. I promise you, the 49ers are on the schedule. There are some teams this year that are going to confuse Caleb Williams, and it will not be pretty, but I'm just saying these are encouraging signs. You want some more? Here's some more. The Athletics' Adam Johns said, quote, unquote, he's good. Quote, the ball comes out quickly. Cough, cough. Not like Justin Fields. I like the way he goes through his progressions. I like the way he climbs the pocket. At this time, it's encouraging, end quote. Let's keep it rolling. Former guest on with John Zagul before. I love this guy's work. Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune, quote unquote. This is a tweet that he sent out. Caleb Williams still has a long way to go to become a top-tier NFL QB. But man, oh man, oh man, some of the QB feel stuff he shows, yes, it's there. Special is in there, end quote. And then finally, from the national perspective, NFL Network Stacey Dales, who's a former friend of my show with former Bears defensive end Corey Wooten, did a national hit and quoted from what she saw from Caleb Williams, quote, he looked especially sharp today. She added, it's artistry to watch him on the field with a football. I'm not saying he's winning the MVP tomorrow. I'm not saying the Chicago Bears are winning the Super Bowl. But when we're talking about burning questions and I'm asking myself, hey, Caleb, how you doing? This is the kind of stuff the Chicago Bears fans need to hear. We don't have any problem getting ourselves excited. I can talk myself to getting excited for a Craig Krenzel start, a Moses Moreno start. Gosh, Caleb Haney. We could still make the playoffs. Caleb Haney. I could talk myself into that kind of excitement. This is the type of encouragement that people that are willing to go on the record, that is something that it's a little extra added element. And this is what makes it exciting. Now, we're going to get into a little bit more Caleb Williams moving forward, but how is Caleb doing? As of right now, Caleb is doing pretty damn good. Number two, burning question number two. Talked about this a lot on the show. And I want to echo some of the comments and beliefs of my co-host, former Bears defensive end Corey Wooten, when I say, who is the Bears starting center? Now, as of right now, I believe we've seen Ryan Bates. There have been some comments from some Bears players that Ryan Bates has been one of the more vocal leaders on the team. Of course, they brought in Colton Shelton. They also have Doug Kramer. But I just think, again, I'm going to keep hammering this, and I'll probably continue to hammer it throughout the season. This is just a really important position to nail. And former Bears defensive end Corey Wooten believes that they need to figure this out sooner than later so they can get as many reps as possible with their starting center and Caleb Williams. If it's Ryan Bates, that's great. Eberflus has not yet committed to a full-time starter at that position. And we'll see how it goes. I guess things can possibly change. But at this time, when we talk about that exchange, it isn't sexy. It isn't fun. I promise you we will talk about wide receivers and running backs during this Burning Questions segment. But who is the starting center? That's a huge one for me. Caleb Williams, in college, was going through the system with Lincoln Riley at USC, where he didn't have to spit out a play call or he didn't have to use cadence at the line of scrimmage. It was a foot down, clap, snap the ball offense, which a lot of college offenses do. It's not Caleb Williams' fault. So it's been a work in progress from the rookie minicamp to OTAs to get the cadence down. Left guard Tevin Jenkins has praised Caleb Williams, saying that that cadence has been cleaned up, and so far everything's been great. Okay, great. We've got that locked down. But from the starting center position, we need this guy in there getting as many reps as possible. This needs to be a little bit more set it and forget it than a competition that I think it opened with starting in training camp. There's a lot of stuff that the center can do. One, he can call out mics. He can call out blitzes. He can give Caleb Williams some of the tools and some of the keys to identify stuff pre-snap when every single NFL defense is going to be going out there trying to confuse Caleb Williams pre-snap. You have to have other eyeballs on the field. It's going to take a village to make Caleb Williams an elite quarterback, especially if you want it in the first 2 years of his career. Having a starting center that can help that knows Shane Waldron's system, like a Ryan Bates, like a Coleman Shelton, it's going to help out big time. So who is the starting center? Right now it's Ryan Bates. I hope it stays that way because that's how they've opened camp. If it's Ryan Bates and they run through camp tons of snaps between him and Caleb Williams and the number one running offense. I think that's a great thing heading into week one, because this brings up my burning question number 3. Can the offensive line stay healthy throughout camp? We've seen this with other teams before. And I'm not going to say it's anybody's fault, but it can sometimes derail a promising season, where I think with the Chicago Bears right now, optimism, if it isn't at an all-time high, I mean, gosh, it's definitely very close to where it was in 2019. It's very close to where it was in the 2011-2012 era when they loaded up on offense. I would even say it's even more exciting than after the Super Bowl year. What can derail that quickly is little bumps and bruises and injuries and key players missing time during training camp. I'm sorry, I'm going to do a cross-sports analogy right now. I thought the Chicago Cubs in spring training looked pretty much ready to roll. I thought Nico Horner, I went and saw 4 or 5 games in spring training. Nico Horner was hitting the ball hard. Seiya Suzuki was crushing the baseball. And then an oblique injury knocks Seiya out. Nico gets hurt early on in the season, and then it just takes them a while to come back and adjust. When you have to adjust on the fly, when you're trying to install a new offense right now, when you're trying to get a new, hopefully franchise quarterback comfortable, you got to cross your fingers for health. And I think they have the depth at many other positions on offense, like wide receiver, tight end, and running back. I do like some of the backup pieces for the offensive line, but man, the cohesion, the continuity, you just want to see them hit the ground running. So that's why I'm saying it's just a question, right? I don't even think there's an answer. There won't be an answer until we see it in September. Can this offensive line stay healthy? Specifically, when we talk about it, I mean, let's look at what happened last year. Tevin Jenkins, hard time staying on the field. When he is on the field, right? Cliche meatball phrase, he's a road grader. They are nasty. They play with an edge when he is in there. When he's not in there, you can tell. Braxton Jones, last year, neck injury. Nobody really saw it coming, ends up on IR, misses a ton of time. Nate Davis, off the field issues, came back, dealt with some bumps and bruises. Maybe he wasn't the best playing shape physically or mentally to play. Missed some time, came back, and when he did, it took him a while to get going. Darnell Wright was the only guy that was solid the whole year. And then obviously the center was a turnstile. You got Lucas Patrick being hurt. If I remember correctly, Lucas Patrick broke his thumb in training camp. These are all the types of things that can derail an offense early. And with Caleb Williams, all I really want to see them give us a fair shot, right? See if he can hit the ground running. The easiest way to do that is with the continuity that's built in training camp, the confidence, the trust with each of his members of the offensive line to give them as many reps as possible so that they can learn each other's tendencies. Caleb can learn what their tendencies are and hopefully rock and roll from there. Because when you talk about the Chicago Bears this season, I know it's super fun to talk about Caleb, the offense. I know it's super fun to talk about some of the pieces in the secondary. But when we talk about the trenches, the unsexy part about it, there's a lot of things to be answered on both sides of the ball. And I'm not sure whether this offensive line is mid-tier. I'm not going to say they're elite. I'm not going to say that they're back end of the NFL. I'm going to say they're right in the middle. But the easiest way to make that happen or even get them possibly creeping into the top 10, top 12 by season's end is going to be health. I'm not saying something that's obvious, but in training camp, that is a burning question that I'm keeping an eye on. And even if they miss a week, it could still impact how the season starts week 1. Moving on, question number 4. Will Ryan Poles add to this team before week 1? I think this is more of a fait accompli, to be honest with you, if you look at the history of Ryan Poles, whether it is in training camp or whether it is mid-season. Ryan Poles likes to stay active. And look, some of his moves haven't worked out, right? I mean, feels like 10,000 years ago since Chase Claypool, that trade came down. And obviously it didn't work. It was a swing and a miss by Ryan Poles. But I like the fact, as a Bears fan, that I can wake up every single day with a pretty strong confidence level that my general manager is scouring the rest of the league to see how he can improve the current roster at the time. One of the big ones that obviously is going to be coming up in the next week or so is going to be that defensive end. Do they add to that room in a way? We've said it before here on the show. Yannick Ngakoue, he signed last August 3rd. So don't think that the fact that they haven't done anything yet is Ryan Poles sitting on his hands. You know, it came a little bit later last year. He still made a move to try and make the team a little bit better, especially on the defensive line. I look for him to do it again at some point in training camp. I'm just not so worried about when it happens. I'm more curious about who it's going to be. A lot of great reports from some of the Bears blogs out there about now would the Chicago Bears possibly have any interest in Carl Lawson. Carl Lawson signed a $45 million deal just a couple of years ago, tore his Achilles in 2021, came back, had a pretty solid season, was kind of more of a depth guy than a starting guy, and then had some more injuries. When he's out there, when he's healthy, he can be a productive piece on the field. I guess he is kind of the 1B to what you would consider the 1A in this situation, which would be Yannick Ngakoue. Yannick Ngakoue most recently just did a tryout for the Miami Dolphins. They did not sign him. They went in a different direction. I don't know how much to read into that, to be honest with you. That feels a little bit more like a system fit. And the good news with Yannick Ngakoue is if he checks all the boxes health-wise, he already knows the system. He played in it last year. Mediocre success, but at least he's a veteran who knows how to get to the quarterback. We need more people like that. And if you can bring in a professional, I think that's the way to go. The thing with Yannick Ngakoue, too, as well, is I don't think he's going to get the type of money that he got last year. So that might also be a little bit of a holdup. I'm not familiar with the cap dollars after Caleb and Roman Dunze have signed. Some people think that the Bears have anywhere between $6 to $10 million. Other people say it's a little bit more. Other people say it's a little bit less. I don't think anyone really knows except for the accounting team with the Chicago Bears. But Yannick Ngakoue is not going to be able to sign for that $8 to $10 million range. I think it's going to have to be probably something a little bit smaller. So I'm curious to see if those negotiations maybe are also holding up that reunion too as well. Another one too as well, and this is a training camp darling, is that, look, guys on other teams, they're going to get cut. They ain't going to make it. They could be cap casualties. It could be a veteran who maybe gets outplayed by a younger player who still has the goods, but maybe a team just wants to go into a different direction and see what they can get out of the younger prospect. It could come down to someone who also maybe gets injured and gets squeezed out. It could come down to maybe someone in training camp just having a bad camp, gets that wake-up call, gets a second chance with another team, and then produces. I think there's a lot to keep an eye on in that particular front. And I would say for Ryan Poles, defensive line, offensive line, I think his ears should be burning at all times to see if there's any kind of way to fortify and bring some more bodies in here. The offensive line, I feel pretty solid about it, but look, you could always use more. I'm sorry, I'm a greedy Chicago Bears fan. I'm a greedy Chicago sports fan. I think an abundance of people, bodies in a room, talent in a room, I think it's a good problem to have. I typically think it sorts itself out. I'm not too worried about, well, how are they going to share one football? Who's going to get the snaps? Who's going to get all the touches? Are there enough at-bats to go around? I promise you it figures itself out. And in the NFL, it most certainly figures itself out when you have bumps and bruises and injuries along the way. And I hope Ryan Poles does perhaps bring somebody in. And I wanted to say to Bears fans, I just think sometimes people need a change of scenery. Maybe they need a change of scheme. Like I said, maybe they need that wake-up call a little bit. Maybe they're not quite in the shape that they should be, but now probably will be by mid-September. There's a lot of different factors. And again, when we talk about scheme in the NFL, I sometimes think the talent gap for guys is a lot smaller than fans think. Where there's a lot of capable guys that are fringe bubble roster players that in a different team can shine in a different situation. We see it fairly often. And then once the person shines in the different franchise, we wag our finger at the front office of how could you let that guy go? Sometimes it comes down to numbers. Sometimes it comes down to money. And that's also going to be happening in about 2 or 3 weeks. I'm really interested to see that training camp wise. Final one, number 5, training camp, burning question number 5 before we take a quick break. This is just a fun one, and I don't think I have an answer. And I don't even know if I honestly care. Who is Caleb's favorite receiver right now in training camp, and who will be Caleb's favorite receiver week 1 when the bell rings? Look, I can totally empathize as a rookie quarterback. You want to have at least one guy that you know that even if you closed your eyes and you threw him the football, that you're going to trust that he's going to come down with it. I mean, I've been hitting Chicago history. Let's keep it local, right? Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall, Mitch Trubisky and Allen Robinson, Justin Fields and DJ Moore. Can it be a bad thing like having too much candy? Sure, absolutely. You can sometimes feed a guy a little bit too much. And sometimes that is a product of having no other guys with the same talent level or some of the other guys that you just don't trust on the field. But when we're talking about the Chicago Bears right now, and we're talking about DJ Moore, multi-Pro Bowler Keenan Allen, rookie wide receiver Roma Dunze. I mean, to some extent, Tyler Scott, not going to be on the list, but I'm going to mention him. Cole Kmet, coming off a career season. Gerald Everett, probably not, but still worth mentioning. You know, who is the guy that Caleb's going to trust on that first drive week 1? Who is Caleb going to trust when it's 3rd and 6 and a defense brings the house? He's got to get it out now. I can make a case for probably any of them. And let's just do this as an exercise. Let's make a case for each of them for the wide receivers at least. DJ Moore. And I'm not saying this to disparage Keenan, and maybe I need to watch a little bit more Keenan Allen, even though he's been on many, many fantasy teams of mine. I've seen a lot of Keenan Allen play football. But when we're just talking about age right now, someone in their prime, coming off the type of season that they're coming off of, I think DJ Moore right now is unquestionably the best wide receiver on the Chicago Bears. I don't think I'm getting out of line by saying that. The guy is unbelievable. I kind of forget when you get into the offseason that once the ball is in DJ Moore's hands, I feel bad for opposing defenses because he's going to punish somebody. When we talk about yards after the catch, when we talk about yak, he's a yak monster. So when you're a rookie quarterback like Caleb Williams, it certainly does behoove you to not only get the ball out quick, but get it to a guy like DJ Moore who can break a couple tackles, turn it upfield, punish a couple of guys, and get you some extra yards, or maybe get you a first down if you throw short of the sticks. DJ Moore is also trying to get paid. He's incentivized. I think he's got a great mix of route running where I think he can do the short stuff that we mentioned. I think the guy can go over the middle. And I also think he still has the speed to go down the sideline and burn somebody. So when Caleb Williams, if I'm looking at it, who's one of the receivers that has all the keys, all the answers, when maybe my mind is maybe moving a little fast because the NFL, I'm seeing a lot of stuff for the first time, I think DJ Moore is a great pick to be my favorite receiver. We'll see, though. New chemistry, right? We're not 100% sure. They've spent some time in the offseason, which is great, but they haven't spent the kind of offseason together like Caleb Williams has spent with maybe number 2, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, Bears fans, if you haven't really gotten a great opportunity, and gosh, I hope the dude stays healthy. He's awesome to watch. The dude knows how to get open. Whenever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the route. The dude can get open. He's great in the red zone. He's great in the middle of the field. He's great from the slot. I don't know if he's exactly maybe that top off the defense burner that he has been of years past. I don't even know if that was ever really his game, to be honest with you. His game is more about catching 10 to 12 balls, racking up 90 to 120 yards, being just a demon in the red zone, picking up a couple touchdowns, and just being that guy that you can hit over and over again. You can go to the Keenan Allen well over and over again and be successful. And what we've seen with Caleb Williams is, they have a little bit of that West Coast connection. And we got to report that, during the mini camps, in their downtime, Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen are just hanging out together, going over plays and not drawing them up on a whiteboard, just talking, having a conversation. What do you like? What do you don't like? Where have you had success? Where have you not had success? Ooh, I like that play. Hey, I like that play too. What if we put this little wrinkle in there? I mean, that stuff means something, right? When you're talking about everyone trying to get along and get to know each other and mesh and continuity, which is what training camp is all about, Keenan Allen seems to have a little bit of a leg up. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. And much like DJ Moore, he's a fantastic route runner. So if you are Caleb Williams, and maybe Keenan Allen does play a little bit more slot than DJ Moore, maybe he's the favorite receiver. You can get the ball out quick to him. You know he's not going to mess up. You know he's not going to be in the wrong spot. Another guy that in theory you can close your eyes and throw the football and Keenan Allen's going to be there. And then finally, number 3, Rome Odunze. What Rome Odunze has going for him right now is he's the same age as Caleb, so they can relate with a lot of things on the field, off the field, experiences, personality traits, the fun factor. I mean, let's be honest here. You kind of are gravitated towards people that are a little bit closer to your age. It happens. It's natural. We watch the same movies growing up. We listen to the same type of music. We know what's going on. There's a lot to bond over, and there's an easy connection to be made there. And look, maybe Rome Odunze doesn't have the moxie or the guile or the smarts that Keenan Allen or DJ Moore have just because they've been in the league a little bit longer. But Rome Odunze maybe has those physical attributes, the jumping ability, the speed, the athleticism, the physicality, the toughness that says, if Caleb throws the ball anywhere, this dude is going to lay his body out on the line, and he's going to go up there and get it for me. I could throw the ball up 20 feet in the air, do a jump ball, play a little game of 500 in the red zone. And I know Rome Odunze is going to come down with it just because he's physically more capable and more gifted than the guy that he's going up against. That's a lot there. Now, favorite receiver right away? Right away, I doubt it, right? Well, typically, rookies, especially wide receivers, they got to kind of earn their keep a little bit. It takes a little while to get them implemented and get them into kind of the motions of an NFL season. So maybe not in September, but October, November, we'll see what happens. I mean, I could see Rome Odunze maybe by season's end building quite a chemistry with Caleb Williams. All 3 of them are compelling cases. If I had to lean right now, I'd probably lean DJ Moore. But if any one of those by season's end is getting the most targets, yards, touchdown celebrations, opportunities, red zone looks, if any one of those guys gets it up to the top, I will not be surprised whether it's Rome, Keenan, or DJ Moore.